Okay. Did you hear President Biden's remarks when he went to Buffalo and spoke in comforting and condolences and consolation of the families?
Yeah, I read them. Yeah.
Do you think that he and the Democrats more broadly are, how do I want to put this, exploiting the opportunity which this terrible tragedy presents to discredit their political opponents by tacitly associating them with the heinous act of the killer? There's a piece by Glenn Greenwald that he puts out at his Substack that I read. I don't know if you saw it, but he excoriates not only the politicians, but also the media for quickly going from the act of this murderous, racist nut who slaughtered those people in that market in Buffalo to the politics of the right wing of the Republican Party who are concerned about immigration. This is Tucker Carlson, who worry that, what do they call it, replacement theory, that the Democrats are trying to replace, Jews will not replace us, you will not replace us, this kind of racism. I think you would agree, this is racism. And to use this incident to draw a line between those two. I mean, Glenn, I'll stop, but I just want to get this question on the table. Are the Dems exploiting? I'm asking you. Greenwald seems to think so, and he recalls the shooting of Congressman Steve Scalise in 2017, shortly after Trump was inaugurated, by a very ardent Democrat who listened to Rachel Maddow every night and was all excited about how terrible it was that Trump was in office and Republicans were bad people. And he goes out, shoots up a bunch of guys playing on a baseball game out in the park, and within an inch of his life, in the case of Scalise, he's wounded. Some police officers were killed by this guy at the site. And Greenwald just wants to make the point. You could have said the rhetoric of the Democrats motivated the rhetoric, the anti-Trump, Trump is a traitor rhetoric of Rachel Maddow motivated this guy. But no one did say that. No one blamed Democrats for this nut. Why are you blaming Tucker Carlson, who stridently denounces the open border, quote unquote, policies as he sees it of the Democrats, and worries about the consequence of unlimited immigration across the southern border, changing the demographic composition of the country in such a way as to promote the liberals' political ambitions? They blame Tucker Carlson indirectly for this, et cetera. I'll stop. You see what I'm trying to say?
I thought it was a very clever point about the Scalise incident. And I think that what it comes down to is just frequency. If we were seeing a large number of, woolly-headed, I don't mean woolly in terms of hair, but crazy, left-wing people, shooting up places because they've been watching Rachel Maddow, I think people would start saying that MSNBC has some blood on its hands. But instead, that's the only such incident that most of us can think of. I've often wondered why that sort of thing didn't happen more. I don't want to put out any kind of model for it, but wouldn't you expect there would be more young black men pulling things like that? But luckily they don't. And instead, I think it would be safe to say that it's usually from the right. It's usually people who have been watching Tucker Carlson or reading the equivalent who pull these sorts of things, the manifestos that you find online, et cetera. So I think that's why nobody said anything about Rachel Maddow. If that happened 6 times in a year, people would start talking about how Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow need to quiet down. But there seems to be a right-wing problem here. But God, this is delicate. I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
Did you read the Times' piece on Mr. Carlson a couple weeks ago? And
I heard about it and I read part of it. I'm not sure I read every word of it. It was very long and extensive.
No, nobody read every word of it. The Times was very thorough because they had to be. They had to get it all in. But yeah, it was not designed to be read. But we all saw that. And how do you and I differed after the racial reckoning. And we had a whole conversation about this in terms of who we would appear with. You appeared with him.
I did.
As in traveling to that place where he lives, et cetera. What is your feeling about that? And I don't mean that in a confrontational way, but based on the fact that his kind of ideology, and there's no evidence that the Buffalo Kid had been watching Tucker Carlson in particular, but it's the same ideology. All of this is coming from.
Quite the contrary. Excuse me for interrupting. The Buffalo Killer despised Fox News along with a long list of other elements of American culture and politics whom he despised. He's way out there.
He's a contrary lunatic. But anyway, how do you feel about, you were on a show with Carlson, and he is promoting this great replacement idea. Where do you fit in on that?
I don't promote the great, quote unquote, great replacement idea, which, by the way, is an imputation of motive to the Democratic Party comparable to the imputation of motive to the Republican Party when they stand up in state legislatures and say, we want to make sure that we have ID for people before we allow them to cast the ballot. The motive that's been imputed in that case is they want to keep Black people from voting. The motive that's imputed in this case is you've got an open border. Minorities are coming across the border in large numbers. You're hoping to change the electoral outcomes in the future because you're bringing these people in. You're importing people who you think are going to vote for you. Now, there's an argument about voter ID that you could have quite independent of motive. How do we do elections? And there can be disputes about that, and people can be on different sides of that, and they don't have to be a racist to want ballot security. And there's an argument about how do you deal with immigration? Should you be strict and have people stay in Mexico and you work very hard to build a wall on the country's border to make sure that they don't come in? Or should you let them in with generous kind of amnesty-like attitude toward the country being a safe haven for people who are seeking a better life? And besides, we're probably largely responsible, either indirectly through climate change or directly through our support for bad governments in Central America over the years for the fact that they're coming in the first place. There's real arguments about the border. There's independent of the motives of the people making the argument. I'm sorry to go on so long, but I have to give that preamble to say I went on Tucker Carlson because I wanted to speak to his audience. I have a message. I wanted the largest possible range of people to hear the message that I have. Tucker likes my message. He likes the fact that I'm telling Black people to stand up with their shoulders back. He likes the fact that I'm saying racism is one thing, self-determination for Black people is another. If we want true equality in the 21st century, we Black people need to get busy raising our kids and taking care of our own business. Nobody is coming to save us, and so forth and so on. I wanted to get my message out to his audience. That did not mean by going on Tucker Carlson that I endorsed everything he says, but I think Tucker Carlson is a very effective voice for conservative ideas in the political discussion of the country. And no, I don't think, despite the Karine Jean-Pierre, this is the new press secretary. She has been heard on MSNBC for years calling Tucker Carlson a racist. I don't think he's a racist. I think he's a conservative. I don't think I was being a part of a right-wing cabal that wants to go out and kill Black people by going on the show. If I thought that, I would have had nothing whatsoever to do with him. He is not, I don't know who you want to pick, Jared Taylor or somebody like that, an open white supremacist. Tucker is a very effective conservative. He's the Rachel Maddow of the right. He puts on a show every night with an opening monologue, oftentimes that, in my opinion, is spot on in skewering conventionality around a lot of these questions. So I think Tucker Carlson is a legitimate contributor to the American political discourse with an audience that warrants to be respected, with making arguments to them that they may or may not agree with, but something that I was prepared to participate in. Now, a lot of people advised me not to go on the show, A, because they thought Tucker would use me for his own purposes, and B, because they thought my reputation would take a hit from having done so. I don't think it has, and I don't think he did.